want to encourage you to read a really inspiring book that I've had a chance to read through over the summer called None Greater by Matthew Barrett, The Undomesticated Attributes of God. Dan on Sunday was encouraging us as we look for and listen out for a new vision for ourselves and our church, that actually, first of all, we need to refresh our vision of God himself. And so I'd really strongly recommend this book by Matthew Barrett, because he encourages us to take the lid off our kind of limited understanding, the well-worn paths of our thinking about God. Perhaps to go beyond our cosy notions of God, the sort of comfortable ideas that we have, and to discover what he calls the otherness, the sheer godness of God. To quote Barrett, he says, "There is none greater than God, not because he's merely a greater version of ourselves, but because he is nothing like ourselves. He's a creator, not to be confused with a creature." And Barrett works his way through a series of chapters looking at what he calls the undomesticated attributes of God. And he draws on some of the great thinkers through the history of the church, people like Anselm and Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. It's not the sort of book that you want to read cover to cover, like a skim read. So it's actually the sort of one where you really want to mine the depths of it, to mull over what it's saying. But it's well worth it, because I think as we grow in our understanding of God, we have a better understanding of ourselves. And I think more importantly, we grow in confidence that in God we have someone who can meet our deepest needs, whatever the circumstances. And that whatever the big issues in our world today, he is more than able to respond appropriately to these issues. So, None Greater by Matthew Barrett. Get hold of a copy, read it, let me know how you get on with it. I found it absolutely brilliant.
And here's another book on a similar theme, a bit less academic than the one that Simon has mentioned, which is why I've been reading it. It's called None Like Him by Jen Wilkin. And like the book that Simon has recommended, it's a book that looks at how different God is to us. And she goes through 10 aspects of his character that really set him apart from us. He's infinite, he's a creator, he's self-sufficient, he's all-knowing, he's all-powerful, he's unchanging, he's eternal, and so on. And she helps us understand why God being like that is so good, such good news for us. She writes very warmly, very straightforwardly. She really helps us see how mind-blowing God is. At the end of each chapter, she's got some verses for meditation and some questions for reflection and so on. She's actually writing specifically for women, but very little of the book is really specifically for women, and so I found it really helpful and encouraging as well. I'd say it's just as good for blokes as it is for women, and I suppose I found it so encouraging because the more my picture of God expands, then the more heartfelt my worship of God is, and the more my faith in God grows. So 2 different books for you. I'd recommend either of them. And, as part of this listen season, we've said that we want to be nourished by God. I think either of these books would be a great way for you to be nourished by God.